Howdy, partners. Do you think you could survive a months-long journey in a wagon, facing extreme conditions? The Oregon Trail will make you compensate for your own resistance. Facing a journey full of dangers, where every step could be the last, is a true test of courage. The Oregon Trail, one of the most challenging routes of the Old West, was the stage for stories of overcoming and bravery. The pioneers who ventured on this trail faced unimaginable challenges, from wild animal attacks to deadly diseases. But what few know is that these brave trailblazers also dealt with fire risks, snake bites, sudden floods, and much more. In this video, we will explore the dangers of the Oregon Trail and discover how these unsung heroes overcame each obstacle. Animal attacks. The journey along the Oregon Trail was full of challenges, with animal attacks being among the most frequent and dangerous. Imagine walking along the trail when suddenly, a grizzly bear appears out of nowhere. These encounters often resulted in serious injuries or even deaths. The pioneers had to be constantly vigilant, ready to defend themselves at any moment. In addition to bears, wolves also posed a constant threat. These predators, often in packs, attacked both the pioneers and their pack animals. The Oregon Trail was a true battleground between man and nature. To protect themselves, the pioneers built makeshift fences around their camps and kept fires burning at night. Cougars, known for their stealth, were another danger on the Oregon Trail. These felines attacked by surprise, often at night when the pioneers were most vulnerable. The lack of adequate lighting made these attacks even harder to prevent. The pioneers had to rely on their instincts and mutual help to survive. Moreover, snake bites were among the most feared by all. Walking along the trail required full attention. Suddenly, feeling a sharp pain in the ankle. Looking down, you see a rattlesnake retreating. These encounters often resulted in severe poisoning or even death due to the lack of adequate medical knowledge. The lack of antidotes and effective treatments meant that a bite could be a death sentence. Venomous snakes, like rattlesnakes, were a constant threat on the Oregon Trail. The pioneers had to be always alert when walking through dense vegetation and camping in unknown areas. To minimize the risk of bites, they wore high boots and avoided areas where snakes were known to hide. The use of guard dogs helped minimize attacks. These animals were trained to alert to the presence of predators and help defend the camp. Fire risks. Fire risks were among the most devastating. Imagine being camped at night, with a fire lit for cooking and warmth, when suddenly, a spark accidentally ignites a wagon. In a matter of minutes, essential supplies can be consumed by flames, leaving the pioneers in a desperate situation. Accidental fires were a constant threat, especially in dry and windy areas. A simple ember could turn into an uncontrolled fire, destroying everything in its path. To minimize this risk, the pioneers took precautions, such as keeping the fire away from the wagons and always having water on hand to extinguish possible flames. In addition to material damage, fires also posed a great danger to the pioneers' lives. Severe burns were common and, without access to adequate medical care, often resulted in fatal infections. The Oregon Trail required the pioneers to be extremely careful when dealing with fire, as a small mistake could have tragic consequences. A practical example of how the pioneers dealt with fire risks was the creation of safety barriers around the fires. They used stones and earth to surround the fire, preventing the flames from spreading. Fires not only destroyed supplies and caused injuries, but also affected the pioneers' morale. Losing everything in a fire could be devastating, both physically and emotionally. The resilience of the pioneers in the face of such adversities is a lesson in perseverance and determination. For the pioneers, every night on the Oregon Trail was a battle against the elements. They had to be constantly vigilant, ready to face any danger that arose, from fires to other dangers on the Oregon Trail. The ability to adapt and the ingenuity of these men and women are an inspiring example for us. Relentless nature. The pioneers frequently encountered sudden floods, which were among the most unpredictable. Being camped by a river, when suddenly, a storm turns a quiet stream into a raging torrent. The rapidly rising waters could sweep away wagons, supplies, and even people, causing destruction and drownings. Sudden storms were common, especially during spring when the melting snow in the mountains increased the volume of rivers. The pioneers had to be constantly observing the weather changes and carefully choosing camping sites to avoid flood-prone areas, requiring vigilance and adaptation to natural conditions. Walking under a scorching sun, with temperatures that could easily cause heat stroke. Or, on the other hand, facing intense snowstorms that could lead to hypothermia. The Oregon Trail was a true test of endurance against the elements. In addition to material damage, floods also posed a great danger to the pioneers' lives. Drownings were common, especially during river crossings. Without adequate bridges or boats, the pioneers often risked their lives trying to cross the turbulent waters, a true test of courage and skill. An example of how the pioneers dealt with floods was the construction of makeshift rafts. They used logs and ropes to create vessels that could transport people and supplies across the rivers. Floods not only destroyed supplies and caused drownings, but also regularly tested the pioneers. Losing everything in a flood could be devastating. The resilience of the pioneers in the face of such adversities is a lesson in perseverance, resilience, and determination. The extreme heat during the summer was a constant enemy. The pioneers had to find ways to protect themselves from the sun, such as wearing wide-brimmed hats and light clothing. Dehydration was a real threat, and the search for potable water sources was a priority. In winter, freezing temperatures posed a deadly danger. The pioneers had to shelter in makeshift tents and keep fires burning to stay warm. The lack of adequate clothing and shelter made survival even more difficult. Every river crossing on the Oregon Trail was a bet against the dangers of nature. Everyone had to be always prepared. Because on the other side of the rivers, other challenges could arise, not just from nature, but from other humans. The right moment for an attack on the pioneers, as they would be tired and vulnerable after an exhausting river crossing. Native attacks. The pioneers on the Oregon Trail faced numerous dangers, and Native American attacks were among the most feared. Native Americans, such as the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, saw the arrival of the pioneers as an invasion of their ancestral lands. The presence of the pioneers often resulted in the destruction of essential natural resources for the native survival, such as buffalo and water sources. This created tensions, as the natives depended on these resources for food and other basic needs. In many cases, the attacks were a form of retaliation against previous aggressions by settlers or the U.S. Army. Incidents of violence and massacres committed by both sides fueled a cycle of revenge and hostility. The attacks varied in scale and intensity. Some were quick and stealthy ambushes, while others involved more prolonged confrontations. Native Americans used their knowledge of the terrain to carry out surprise attacks, taking advantage of the vulnerability of the pioneers traveling in large groups with slow and heavy wagons. The danger of being camped at night or after crossing rivers and suddenly, a group of Native American warriors emerging from the shadows was real. These confrontations often resulted in serious injuries or even deaths, as well as the loss of essential supplies, leaving the pioneers in a desperate situation. Conflicts with Native Americans arose when settlers invaded their lands, leading to violent confrontations and widespread fear. Although many Native Americans helped the pioneers, offering guidance and supplies, there were also those who saw the settlers as a threat to their survival and way of life. The Oregon Trail was a field of tension between different cultures, where peaceful coexistence was not always possible. The uncertainty about when and where an attack might occur kept the settlers in a constant state of alert. These uncertainties required the pioneers to be meticulously cautious and vigilant in dealing with these situations, always ready to defend themselves and protect their families. The pioneers protected themselves from native attacks by always traveling in defense groups. They traveled in large caravans, with armed men ready to protect the group in case of attack. The Oregon Trail tested the limits of human courage and resilience, requiring incredible inner strength to continue the journey. For the pioneers, every day on the Oregon Trail was a struggle for survival. Each dawn brought its challenges, where only the tough remained standing to continue, only the tough, only the strong. Accidents on the Oregon Trail. Among numerous dangers, accidents were among the most common. A heavy wagon tipping over on a steep terrain, crushing supplies and severely injuring the pioneers, was routine for the brave pioneers. These accidents could occur at any moment, turning an already difficult journey into a true fight for survival. Wagon rollovers were frequent, especially in mountainous and rugged areas. The pioneers had to be extremely careful when maneuvering their wagons, often using ropes and levers to avoid disasters. A practical example of how the pioneers dealt with accidents was the formation of rescue teams. They worked together to help the injured and recover lost supplies. Accidents caused pain and suffering and also affected the pioneers' morale. Seeing a companion injured or losing essential supplies left in the air who would be next. Every day on the Oregon Trail was a fight against the unforeseen. Diseases. Diseases were among the deadliest. Day after day, several people began to show symptoms of cholera. Without access to adequate medical care, the disease spread rapidly, claiming lives in a matter of days. Cholera, transmitted by contaminated water, was one of the leading causes of death among the pioneers. The lack of basic sanitation and potable water sources made prevention almost impossible. The pioneers had to be extremely careful when choosing their camping sites and treating the water before consuming it. In addition to cholera, other waterborne diseases, such as dysentery, also posed a constant threat.